Wherever you may be listening from YouTube, Spotify, or otherwise, this is the Proshot podcast. And with us this afternoon, we have a very special guest from CBC and Saga 960, the voice of the Mississauga Steelheads, Matt Cullen.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking time. You're a busy guy covering the Blue Jays. I know they are trying to find a home right now, but I saw you on CBC doing that. So you're a busy guy, and we really appreciate you doing this.
Oh, today was a busy day, and the Blue Jays are going to be in Buffalo, it looks like, for the rest of the summer, or whatever you want today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again. Well, the first question for you. I know we talked a bit a few months ago when the OHL season was still on, and you mentioned how you used to be a hockey player yourself. You played goalie, if I'm right?
Correct. Yeah. Good memory. Yeah. I played some goalie growing up in Vancouver where I went to high school.
Okay. What made you want to go from covering the net to covering the game itself?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that all kids playing hockey, they want to try and make it into the NHL. And certainly when I was in high school, that was my number one goal. I was pretty keen on waking up and going to practice and, playing games and trying to get noticed by scouts. And I played some junior and, I had some varying success. I had a broken jaw, unfortunately, in grade 12, took a slap shot in practice right about here, and broke two parts of my jaw. Mm-hmm. So, it's hard to say what would have happened, but at that point I was looking at colleges, things like that in the US, and saying, hey, let's make a go of this. Can we do something? But that took me out for part of the rest of the season. And at that point in that summer, the writing I kind of felt was on the wall, and was like, are you really going to try and make a go of it? And then, I felt that the answer at that time was, I'd be best to focus doing something else. And my parents were like, you should go to university. It's not a bad option. They were always kind of pushing that from the beginning, even though they wanted me to kind of keep pursuing my dream on one hand. They sort of said, the safe option is, getting a degree and trying to set yourself up is best. So, that summer I made the choice. I went to St. FX University, way on the other side of Canada, the East Coast in Nova Scotia, and tried out for a couple of teams. Didn't get my game back, and that the layoff didn't serve me well. And after I got cut a couple times in Nova Scotia, I was like, what, maybe it's best to focus on school. And then that's what I did. And then a couple of years later, in my last year of university, without any experience at all, I sort of expressed interest. I started writing for the school paper, covering some teams. Eventually got to know someone who was deciding about hockey games and things like that. And they said, hey, if you want to do some hockey games or some basketball games, we'll take you. And, no worries if you don't have any experience or anything like that. It was pretty lucky looking back on it. They said, we'll even pay you, which is people trying to break into the industry. There's not a lot of paid stuff out there right now. So, all in all, it one passion on the ice transition off the ice. And a couple of years later, here I am.
Awesome. And that's quite the story. That's pretty amazing. So transitioning to your opportunity with the Mississauga Steelheads to do play-by-play, how did that come to be? How did the story happen there?
How did I get to doing play-by-play? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, I've always really enjoyed that aspect of the game. And I think that goes back to my childhood. Like, there was a lot of, I had a very strict, well, not very strict, but my parents were strict about how much TV and how much computer and how much, we didn't have a PlayStation or an Xbox when I was growing up. And sort of Friday night was sort of my, if I want to watch games, Friday night was sort of my time of the week. I had an hour, maybe 2 hours if I was lucky and they weren't paying attention. So a lot of the time, when I couldn't watch these hockey games, my parents were like, no, it's a school night, you're going to bed. I would sneak a radio up into my room, or I had an old Walkman back in the day. You guys are probably too young for those. Walkman, and you could hook it up. And so there's a lot of listening to radio and listening to Walkmans, it was under my pillow, or I would hide under the covers and just listen to the game. I was just that into it. And, I still am. I still actually, will listen to games sometimes, just lying in bed trying to fall asleep. So I've always like really enjoyed that part of the game. And, when I first started at St. FX, like I still have that tape. It wasn't good. It was not a good, not a good demonstration of when I first started. So I like to think I've come a long way from but always a work in progress. And, the great play-by-play guys will tell you that like, it's just about how many games you do and how much time you put into it. How much time are you going to prepare? And are you on that day? And yeah, painting a description, especially on rate, which we are at Saga 960 AM. It's, you're essentially the eyes of the listener, and there's a lot of pressure that goes along with that. So I always try and do my best to paint a picture and bring up the excitement when there is some. And if it's not an exciting game, then find other ways to entertain.
Absolutely. That's a really cool story about your Walkman. I do actually remember a Walkman.
Nice.
I really wish. Honestly, a few days ago, I was thinking about getting one just because I think it's a cool concept. But anyway, since we're talking about the game of hockey, just yesterday, the NHL welcomed a new team, the Seattle Kraken.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? Were you surprised by the name? Because it's a pretty different name.
I have a couple of times going to Vancouver. It's a pretty different place, and they like to kind of beat to their own drum out there. So I always had a feeling that Kraken was going to be the call there. And like, even with my friends off the record, I was like, I think it's going to be Kraken. And it turned out just, by luck of draw, it was, the Emeralds were in there, or the Metropolitans were the old Seattle team that actually won the Stanley Cup back in 1917 before the NHL was even created. So that was my other one. And I know that Seattle did some branding, and they called their like VIP section the Metropolitan Club. So I was like, that could be an option as well. But yeah, really excited to have another team on the West Coast. I mentioned my Vancouver roots, so I think that fans on the West Coast of Canada are going to have a geographical rival right away. Yeah, I like the name Kraken. I think that there's most nicknames end with S. The Maple Leafs or the Oilers or the Flames or whatever you want to do, Tigers, etc. I think that they wanted to make have a name that reflected the maritime culture of the West Coast, and I think the jerseys look pretty sharp as well. So yeah, overall, I've heard some people really hate it, but I think that most people are pretty big fans of it so far.
Yeah, and it looks like it's going to be that's probably one of my favorite jerseys that I've seen so far. Looks like it's going to be a pretty good one. Looking to
absolutely.
Looking to when they start playing, that's going to be amazing. Touching back on preparation a little bit that you were saying earlier for the games, what kind of preparation do you have to do ahead of time? Maybe how much time do you give yourself before the games to kind of get everything together?
Yeah, preparation's a big one for sure. And at the beginning of my career, like when I was doing games for St. FX and moving up, and I did a year with the Oakville Blades, and like I really learned a lot about like what it takes to prepare. Like, it's not just printing out a lineup card and go into the stadium and be like, yeah, number 26 is player X, and that's all you really need to know. So like reaching out to a lot of people have been very generous with their time with me, like big name broadcasters in Canada and the US, and just chatting with them, learning how they prepare. You sort of realize like, hey, like if we're gonna make a go at this, like you're gonna have to step it up and put in some more time. And I think that my time at CBC has also really helped that as well, as they have such a rich sports coverage. They won't let you on the they know that you're ready. And thankfully, when I came in the door, I realized that and was able to do what was necessary. So I think that like when it comes to hockey games, it's all about trying to tell stories, right? Like these, a lot of people and even fans that really know who these do we know those guys are looking to make names for themselves, and guys that are looking to get drafted like Ula, they are going to be big. So you're sort of the first one in there to sort of tell their story. You get to see them at a junior hockey level, you get to talk to them, you're with them on the bus. Those are key relationships, and those really help you prepare as well. So I would say, like, for a game, I usually put in, I would say probably, depending on what it is. But if it's I would say anywhere from 4 to 8 hours, I would say per game, depending on what the situation is. Like if I know the team, like if we're seeing the Sudbury Wolves for the 6th time this year, then you're kind of focusing more on the secondary stories, right? What else here? So I would say that's sort of the strategy. But I really found like this year when we're actually traveling with the team for the first time in Mississauga, like I've learned a lot, and I've really learned to add to my broadcast with that, just about what what they're doing, what they like to do away from the rink, how they practice, how they work out, how they eat, how they sleep. Like it could be, could be all sorts of different things. I think I'd like to do more of that and more tell more of the human side of the stories rather than just they have 12 in the last 8 games and they're playing well. That's certainly a part of the story, but there's certainly a lot more to discover. And sometimes you can't do that typing on a computer at home.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. As you just said, you were able, for the first time this year, you were able to travel with the team to cover their away games. How much personally to you is that, like how much of an advantage is it to be able to, talk to these guys, ask them direct questions, maybe about more of the human side of hockey, like you said, besides, how do you feel for this game, or how many points you're going to get, typical questions. Like, do you find as an advantage for you?
For sure. Yeah. Like I've gotten to know the team a lot better. And, we would have liked to have traveled before in the past, but just, the resources were never there. So that's a big tip of the cap to Saga 960 AM, providing all 68 games, because there's been hockey for a long time in Mississauga. But I think that last year we didn't get to 68 games with the pandemic, unfortunately. We got to about 61 and 61 too. And anyway, that was the first time that Mississauga fans have had that kind of coverage. And if you go back a couple of years ago, there was actually no coverage at all when there was a bit of a gap between radio and the TV coverage. So, things have come a long way in a hurry. And I think that's for hockey fans in Peel region. And I've certainly experienced a lot of like interaction coming back to me. And there's personally all that to say, like, I'm just around the team a lot more, right? Like, if we're on a road trip, like let's say we're going to Peterborough for a 7:00 game, like we're in Mississauga at the Paramount Fine Food Center at about 2:00, right? They're to warm up. I'm getting my last minute notes printed out, doing some prep or talking with an assistant coach or JR, head coach GM. And it's great. You get to learn so much about them, because a lot of the guys, like I'll use Ulla Bjork again, like he's in North America, Canada for the first time. I know he played for a year, and it's a big change. So like, what's he going through? What's his billet family like? How does he keep in touch with his fans in Norway, coming over to smaller ice here? How has he been able to sort of change his game? So those sort of conversations start to get, really years that are on NHL radars. Like you can just tell, like, their confidence level is growing and growing throughout the season. Like James Hardy's a great example of that. Like a great rookie season, scored 15 goals, but then, is up in the 34 category in his second year. Like you could just tell, like his game really took a big step, and, confidence grew once the NHL scouts started to look into him. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of ups and downs, like there are with any hockey. And, with teenagers, the ups and downs, the swing is maybe a little bit bigger than some other leagues, but it certainly creates for a lot of excitement. So, really hoping that we can get back going in the fall again and telling more of those great stories and exciting stuff coming up with Saga 960 with regards to player profiles and just adding more coverage.
Absolutely. And so there have been a lot of, speaking of the ups and downs in hockey, there have been a lot of great games this past season. There have been some not so great ones. But if you had to pick a favorite game, and this can be any season that you've ever done it, what would be your favorite game that you ever called?
Oh man, favorite game that I ever called. It was a good one this year. I wasn't there, unfortunately, for this one, but there was a game this year. I think this was the game of the year. It was against Kitchener, where the Steelheads were down. I believe it was 4-1 in the third period. Our daughter was born that weekend, so I was like in the maternity leave.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I was watching. I was listening to the call actually on my phone, and that sounded like a great game. And I know there was a lot of special causes there as well. The Steelheads were sponsoring a young man and won it in overtime on a Cole Schwint hat trick. So I think that was the game of the year this year, even though I wasn't there. Would have loved to have been there, but Victor Finley did a great job on that call. I think that probably my favorite games go back into the 2017 season where the Steelheads made their run to the OHL final. That was exciting, and Ray, you kind of knew that year just with the team that they had. Mikey McLeod was the captain, Nate Bastian was on the team, as well on the back end. And, there was a double OT game in the was the Eastern final against Peterborough. I was on color commentary ice level at the time for Rogers TV, and the Steelheads won it in double OT. And that was, they knew they went up 3-0 at that point. You knew they were going to be going to the OHL final at that point. That was pretty neat just to be between the benches and just seeing the reaction of the team, as that was a real swing game in the series as well. Another game that stands out, it was the year prior. Really good first round series against the Barrie Colts. That was the Alexander Nylander year when he was with his dad, Michael Nylander, with the Steelheads. He was an electric player to cover again. And the Steelheads, they ended up losing that series in 7 games to Barrie. But boy, they were the 7 seed and Barrie was the 2 seed. They really pushed the Colts hard that year. And I remember one game they went to double overtime. Again, I was ice level for color commentary, and the craziest of scenarios in double overtime. There's a breakaway. We think that the Steelheads have scored, but the player runs into the goalie and the net comes off. The goalie is hurt, so they bring their backup goalie in double overtime. And the very first shot, once he got in the net, was sort of a bank shot from behind the net, went off his skated in, and that's how the Steelheads won that game. And that was just a crazy turnover that I'll always remember. Calling overtime hockey in the playoffs. I'm really sad we didn't get to do that this year, because I was really excited about the Steelheads heading into the postseason. But I'd say those 3 games: the Kitchener game, the Peterborough game from the OHL final run, and then that series against Barrie. That was my first OHL playoff series, and man, that was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, that's really, really cool. Especially those when they were incredibly competitive, always making fairly deep playoff runs, and like you said, 2017, absolutely electric. You mentioned your broadcast partner, Victor Finley. You guys have broadcasted over a lot of games, and specifically this past, or stuff like that.
It was pretty smooth. I mean, I had known Victor for a couple of years leading up to Mississauga, and he had certainly made a name for himself covering university U sports with Ryerson, and he had a really unique opportunity. Is that Ryerson has a great technical setup, and they produce all their own games, and it looks like it's professional broadcast, and Victor did a great job of becoming the youth sports hockey guy, I'd say, in Canada. So right then and there, he knew his stuff. So obviously youth sports is sort of the next level after junior hockey. If you're not drafted by an NHL club, a lot of the players will go to youth sports. So he actually knew junior hockey and the OHL particularly well, because he would see a lot of guys that played junior hockey transfer over into youth sports. So he really knew the game well, and then he started doing some freelance work at CBC. So I started to get to know him a little bit better then. I covered the Pete's the year before this year. So again, we crossed paths a couple of times, and there was a shakeup in Peterborough, and it looked like he was going to be out of the picture there for a little while. So once we saw that we had an opportunity to get a quality broadcaster to come and help us out. The team reached out to me, and what do you think about Victor? And they had their eye on him clearly for a little while. So Yeah, didn't Victor earned that job himself. That's for sure. And I think that once we got onto the air, like he knows the game really well from a play-by-play side, so that really complements when he does color commentary. And then I did color commentary for a couple of years before shifting to radio. And so we both know the games from both sides, and we knew that we needed some help this year schedule-wise, and. Victor's a guy that says yes to a lot of things. When he's available, you can count on him to be there and to do a really good job. So, that's a real key for young broadcasters. Is it's not always, there's a lot of pressure involved, and if to say yes to odd assignments, and then maybe you don't really know where this is going to lead you. But I remember when I started out, can you cover this sport? Can you cover volleyball? Can you cover track and field? Stuff you're like, well, I don't really know too much about this. Can you cover IndyCar? That happened to me last summer. Can you step outside of your comfort zone and say yes? And, in my case, I'd always try and say yes as much as possible. And I think that Victor's the same. So yeah, his experience leading up to Mississauga, plus the fact that we both knew all the elements, the broadcast, we both done some real, it was a good mix, and we're looking forward to keeping that going.
Absolutely. That's you guys, just personally as a fan, and getting to stand next to you guys for a couple of games. So that was a really cool experience to see. You guys are doing some great work there, and hopefully you guys can continue in the fall. Last question for you about the Steelheads. They had a pretty good draft, at least I think. They had a very, very good draft. They got scoring in Zach Lavoie and Carson Christie, and they got a really good two-way centerman in Owen Beck. How do you feel the Steelheads will do, in your opinion, as a hockey fan next season?
Well, I think they're really moving into, we saw what they could do a couple of years ago when we went to the OHL, when you have really good leaders on the team. Those guys like Mike McLeod and Nathan Bastian. And if you go down the lineup, they had Stefan LeBlanc there as well. Those were really solid core guys. And that really pushed the younger guys on the team to be better. And I think that we're approaching year-old year like Cole Schwint and Kian Washkarak, of Nick Canady as an overager. James Hardy moving into another year. He can put the puck in the back of the net. Kai Edmonds will be an overager this year in net for Mississauga. That's what all the ingredients are there to have a really good season in Mississauga. And I remember talking to James Richmond, the head coach and GM of the Steelheads, about the chances for next year. And he said, I think that we could have a couple of 100-point guys. And the Steelheads have never had 100-point guys before. And they've come close a couple times. Owen Tippett had some good years, but they've never had 100-point guys in their history. So I think that just his confidence in the things we're going, and now you add what the rookie class here. And I had a chance to talk with Watt earlier on this year. He's a guy that can put he was a high first-round pick. They had their eye on him. They said, we don't think, we're picking 7th. He might not be around. And then when he was, the team was just ecstatic about that. And I think that, goal scoring was what the Steelheads were missing last year. There was a good stretch in there, especially at the start of the season, where Victor and I would be saying, they got us. You can't get by on 2, 1, 3 goals a game. Like, it's just not going to win the majority of those games. It's just too much pressure on your defense and goaltending. We moved in November, December, and January, and we saw what this team could do rolling at their full potential, and the goals were coming fast and furious. And then towards the end of the season, there was a couple of weekends which were a little bit slower, but overall we sort of saw it average out. And if you could add just a little extra punch in there, and I think that's what the Steelheads did with their draft this year. They got some very talented offensive guys. They've always been a back-end team first, protect the net, take care of the blue line, and the rest will sort of take care of itself. Now they've got there's another cycle on the verge here in Mississauga, and I really hope that, we get back to playing sports with the pandemic. And, I think that there'll be a lot of exciting times in Mississauga this year going ahead.
I'm really looking forward personally to next season. It looks like it's going to be quite the team that we've got coming. It'll be pretty interesting. Now, before we kind of wrap it up, I have one last question for you, Matt. If you had one or two pieces of advice to give to someone who's looking to get into sports radio, what would they be?
Oh man, well, there's you can go a long way, with this for sure. But yeah, if I would say that if you're starting out, like know what you're getting into. I think that when I was first starting out, like I think you can easily be not tricked, but you maybe don't have the full image. Like when you see the bright lights, the TV, you go to an NHL game, like, oh, they're the on-camera guys, or they're radio guys, and there's the technical crew, or same football, or any other professional sport. Like those jobs are hard to get. Those jobs, people work a long time. You need to catch some. You need to catch breaks to get there for sure. There's meet. So you're prepared. That's kind of where the meeting is. But I think people got to know what they're getting into. It's a competitive industry. There's a lot of people that want in. Even people that have been doing it a long time. Like there's no guarantee you'll be doing the call next year. So I've already doing this for a couple of years. I've already been laid off a couple times. And those are hard conversations, but it's about how do you respond and how do you have thick skin? How do you get back in the game? And there are room for people. There is room in the industry for people that are good, and I really believe that. Even though there's maybe not as much, newspaper coverage as there used to be, but there's a lot more online stuff. Like you guys are doing it with this podcast. Like that's great. That's a great start. Like you're producing your own content from your own houses, and that's that's new relatively, right? So. People that work hard and have talent, and the sad reality of it right now is that for people starting out, there's just not a lot of paid gigs. And even for the Steelheads, I was doing that on my own time for a couple of years. Same when I did the Oakville Blades Junior A. So you really got to love it. Like if you go into it for the money and you're thinking I want to make six figures here by the time I'm 20 or 25, like might happen, and I hope it does, but I don't know if you're in it for the right reasons. You got to do it because you really love it, and you want to tell stories, and you want to meet people and make great connections. And then the last thing, once you've done all of that, is how do you grow? And a lot of that is networking, and it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of that too, so that's great. And a lot of people in this industry have been very kind to me. They've offered their time to give advice. And it's a competitive industry. There's lots of people that are asking for jobs, and a lot of people that that want to move up. But a few people have been very kind with their time and have provided some advice. And next thing you know, maybe there's an opportunity down the road somewhere. That's how I got into Mississauga. It was with Allie Monroe, and it was I'll tell a quick story. It was a Sunday afternoon 2 p.m. game. Back in 2014, and it was a Steelheads Sudbury Wolves game. The Steelheads were 9th, the Wolves were 10th. Both teams were out of the playoffs, and the opportunity came up to call this game, and that sounds amazing. This is what I really want to do. And then I got a call like the night before saying, you know what, Matt, we're good. We've got enough people. Like, I think, call you next time. And I was like, no. Like, I've prepared for this game. Like, I really, is there anything I can do to help out? Like, I'll do sideline reporting. I'll do color. I'll do play-by-play. I really want to be in, all that sort of stuff. So, okay, fine. We can figure something out. And it turned out to be a great game. Even though it was two non-playoff teams, the Steelheads were down 3-1 after two. They came back and won on a Brandon Devlin slap shot from the point. 4-3, and that call I was on play-by-play for. That call became my lead shot on a televised OHL game. That all of a sudden, just because I was in the right place at the right time, I got a call and said yes, pursued it, and said, I really want to take this. It worked out, and remember that summer, the Steelheads were saying, okay, we're going to make a shift broadcast team. We're going to move, we're going to switch things up. And I got word of that through Allie Monroe, who I worked with at the Steelheads game. And, my tape was in the hands of the right people at the Steelheads organization. And really, it could have gone the other way. I could have just hung up the phone and said, maybe next time. Might not have been a next time, right? So be persistent, and networking is key, no matter what stage you are in your career.
And that's amazing. Matt, well, I wanted to thank you very much for taking the time to sit down with us this afternoon. It's quite an amazing opportunity to get you here this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys.
And we'd love to have you back.
Feel free to call anytime. You know where I am, and have certainly some time now that we're all at home. But hopefully I can see you guys back at the rink. Hopefully there'll be some hockey to call and announce, and to be a fan of in the fall. We're